Welcome to Cruise News, your daily update on everything happening at sea. Visit cruisenews.io to see today's stories and sign up for email alerts. When you look closely at the global cruise industry, you quickly realize it is essentially an exercise in extreme logistics.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you're moving millions of people housed in these massive floating structures across complex jurisdictions.
Right, and highly fragile environments. So today, we are examining three very different geographic realities that dictate exactly how this industry operates.
Yeah, and we're starting in the Mediterranean. We really need to understand the strict local infrastructure that's required for maritime incident response.
Exactly. And then we are heading over to the Pacific Northwest to look at how a major cruise line manages long-range capacity when, federal law strictly limits where their ships can actually go.
And finally, we're going to look at the Caribbean, specifically where traditional ports are literally digging up the ocean floor just to compete with the highly controlled environments of cruise line private islands.
Right, because it really all comes down to how cruise lines and local governments interact with physical space.
Yeah, whether you are reacting to an emergency in a Greek archipelago or, trying to navigate a protected Alaskan glacier.
We're trying to park a billion-dollar megaship in the Virgin Islands.
Right, exactly. The physical infrastructure on the ground dictates what is actually possible.
So I want to start today with the ongoing investigation in Greece because it really highlights how those local infrastructure constraints play out during an emergency. We are respectfully reporting the facts as provided by the Greek Coast Guard regarding an incident that occurred early Sunday, July 26.
Right.
A 62-year-old woman from the United Kingdom died in her cabin aboard a Marshall Islands flagged cruise ship while it was anchored near Santorini.
And standard procedure in these cases dictates that the local authorities step in immediately. So, the Port Authority of Thira has formally opened an investigation into the matter.
From an operational standpoint, managing a medical incident in an island destination like Santorini requires a very specific logistical response, right?
It does. The Coast Guard's timeline shows the Thira Port Authority was notified early that Sunday morning. But the really key detail here is the routing of the response.
Okay, how so?
Well, the passenger was transported via a passenger boat specifically to Athenios port.
Wait, help me clarify the geography here, because when you cruise into Santorini, you usually tender into the old port, right?
Yeah, usually.
The one they call Scala, which sits right at the base of the cliffs below the town of Thira. So why wouldn't emergency responders just use the primary cruise tender location?
It's a logistical issue. Scala is built entirely for foot traffic and tourism. I mean, it sits at the bottom of a massive caldera cliff.
Right. It's incredibly steep.
Exactly. So if you arrive there, your options to get up to the main town are taking a cable car, walking up hundreds of steep steps, or taking a mule.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and obviously, none of those are viable for commercial vehicles. And critically, they aren't viable for medical transport, like an ambulance.
That makes total sense. You can't put an ambulance on a cable car.
No, you can't. So Athenios port, on the other hand, is located on the southwest side of the island. It serves as Santorini's main commercial and ferry port, precisely because it actually has the heavy road infrastructure carved into the cliffside.
Right, to support vehicular traffic.
Exactly.
So it's a necessary diversion based purely on the physical realities of the island's roads.
Yeah, it's just the reality of the terrain.
So after arriving at Athenios, the passenger was moved to the General Hospital of Thira, where she was pronounced dead.
Yes, and following this, the Port Authority ordered the body to be transferred to the Forensic Medical Service of Piraeus for an autopsy.
And Piraeus is the major port city on the Greek mainland, right? The one serving Athens.
Right. Piraeus houses the centralized forensic facilities that are necessary for this level of official governmental investigation.
So the local island hospital handles the immediate response, but the official forensic investigation requires the mainland infrastructure.
Exactly. You need the larger municipal resources for that.
Now, one detail that really stands out in this report is the vessel identification. The Greek authorities have only described the vessel by its flag state, the Marshall Islands. Right. They have not publicly named the ship itself.
They haven't, no. And that is fairly standard in the early hours of an ongoing probe. The authorities are usually very cautious.
But there is tracking data available, right?
There is. Independent maritime tracking data provides a very clear picture of the traffic in that specific area. A review of data from CruiseMapper, which relies on the Automatic Identification System, or AIS trackers.
Those are the trackers that ships use to broadcast their real-time positions.
Right, exactly. So that data, which was subsequently cited by both People and Cruise Hive, confirms there were exactly 3 cruise ships anchored near Santorini on that day.
Okay, what were the 3 ships?
The Celebrity Infinity, the Oceania Regatta, and the Celestial Discovery.
So if we cross-reference the registries for those 3 vessels against the authorities' statement about a Marshall Islands flag...
Well, the data points clearly in one direction. Of those 3 ships present, Oceania Cruises Regatta is the only one listed as operating under the Marshall Islands flag.
Okay, but we should be very clear that Greek authorities have not officially confirmed this identification yet.
No, they have not. And Oceania Cruises did not immediately respond to media requests for comment on the matter.
Right. But the tracking data does place the regatta there during a scheduled 14-day sailing.
Yes. And looking at that specific itinerary gives us a good sense of their routing. The regatta departed Monaco on Friday, July 17.
With scheduled calls across Italy, Malta, Croatia, Montenegro, Greece, and Turkey.
Exactly. And following the call in Santorini on the 26th, the ship proceeded to Mykonos.
And then it was listed to call in Izmir, Turkey on Tuesday, July 28.
Right, before concluding the voyage in Istanbul on Friday, July 31.
We will, of course, continue to monitor the statements from the Greek Coast Guard and the Forensic Medical Service of Piraeus as their official probe advances.
Absolutely. You know, what really stands out to me here is how a single event in the Aegean highlights the industry's total reliance on existing municipal infrastructure.
Right. I mean, cruise ships are incredibly advanced pieces of technology, but they ultimately have to plug into the local reality of the ports they visit.
Exactly. Which actually brings us to an entirely different operational model.
Right. What happens when a cruise line wants to operate at a massive scale in a region where the infrastructure barely exists?
Or where the environment is so heavily protected that you are legally capped on what you can even do.
That is a perfect transition because we are moving from the Mediterranean to the Pacific Northwest to look at exactly that.
Yeah, the Alaska deployment.
Right. Princess Cruises has officially opened sales for its 2028 Alaska season, and the sheer scale of this deployment is just staggering.
It really is.
We are looking at 185 departures utilizing 8 different ships, which includes the Star Princess.
Yeah, and those departures are spread across 14 distinct itineraries.
When I read that number 185 departures in a single short summer season, it's hard to even wrap my head around the logistics required to move that many people through such a remote coastline.
Well, to manage a volume like that, you have to completely decentralize your passenger embarkation.
You can't just funnel everyone through one city.
Exactly. That would be a nightmare. So for this 2028 season, Princess is utilizing 5 major West Coast home ports as logistical hubs.
Okay, what are the 5 hubs?
They will position ships out of Seattle, Washington, Vancouver, British Columbia, Anchorage, specifically utilizing the deepwater port of Whittier.
Right, Whittier is essential for the larger ships.
Yeah, and then rounding it out, they have San Francisco and Los Angeles.
So the deployment fundamentally splits into 2 distinct consumer products, right?
Right, you have the round-trip inside passage voyages.
And those depart from Seattle, Vancouver, San Francisco, and Los Angeles.
Exactly. And then you have the one-way voyage of the Glaciers cruises.
I want to look closely at the voyage of the Glaciers, because just from a purely operational standpoint, running a one-way cruise seems exponentially more complicated than a round trip where you just return to the exact same dock.
Oh, it is vastly more complicated. The voyage of the Glaciers is a 7-day, one-way itinerary running between Vancouver and Whittier.
Okay.
So from a supply chain perspective, the ship has to constantly cycle provisions, coordinate crew changes, and manage passenger turnarounds at 2 entirely different ends of the continent.
That sounds incredibly demanding, so why do it?
Well, the defining feature of this route, the whole reason they deal with that logistical headache, is the inclusion of 2 separate glacier viewing experiences on every single sailing.
Wow, 2 on one trip.
Right. Typically, Princess pairs a visit to Glacier Bay National Park with a visit to either Hubbard Glacier or College Fjord.
And across both product lines, the 2028 schedule incorporates 16 different Alaska destinations.
Yeah.
This includes the major municipal ports like Juneau, Ketchikan, and Skagway, as well as scenic cruising in places like Endicott Arm and Dawes Glacier.
And they are also implementing late evening port calls, which they market as more ashore calls.
I think Jim Barra, the chief commercial officer, put it best. He said, Alaska is one of the world's most awe-inspiring destinations.
It really is. But the real logistical ballet here isn't just happening on the water, it is the land integration.
Yes, because a huge portion of the Alaska cruise market is about moving thousands of passengers from the coastline deep into the interior of the state.
Right, so Princess is selling cruise tour packages grouped into 3 specific collections.
Which are the Denali Essentials, the Denali Explorer, and the Denali Escorted collection.
Exactly.
But to do this effectively, they essentially had to build their own infrastructure, didn't they? I mean, they aren't just relying on local independent hotels for this volume.
No, not at all. Princess relies heavily on its own physical real estate. They actually operate 5 specific Alaska wilderness lodges.
5 of them.
Yeah. You have the Copper River Princess Wilderness Lodge, the Denali Princess Wilderness Lodge, the Fairbanks Princess Riverside Lodge, the Kenai Princess Wilderness Lodge, and the McKinley Princess Wilderness Lodge.
So these serve as the physical anchors for stays near Denali, Kenai Fords, and Wrangell-St. Elias National Parks.
That's exactly right.
But how do they physically bridge the gap between a massive ship arriving in Whittier and a lodge deep in the interior? I mean, you can't just put 3,000 people on a fleet of buses and send them down a 2-lane highway.
No, you use rail. And this is where the operational efficiency really shines. Princess utilizes a service they call the Direct-to-the-Wilderness Rail Service.
I've seen pictures of these. They're the custom glass-domed rail cars, right?
Yeah, with the open-air viewing platforms.
So explain the mechanism of this same-day transfer. How does it actually work on embarkation or disembarkation day?
The trains are routed to physically connect the cruise terminal in Whittier directly with the Denali area.
Literally right to the ship.
Right. So passengers disembark the ship, step directly onto the train, and are moved straight to their interior lodge.
So there is no intermediate hotel stay required in Anchorage.
Exactly. It's a seamless transfer.
Yeah.
And they also utilize this rail service throughout the summer for segments moving passengers between Anchorage, Talkeetna, Denali, and Fairbanks.
It sounds like a highly controlled, closed-loop transportation network.
It is.
Yeah.
And that level of control is necessary because the entire 185 departure matrix is ultimately dictated by something they cannot control at all.
Right. Strict capacity constraints set by the federal government.
Specifically, access to Glacier Bay National Park.
So the 2028 program includes 86 planned scenic cruising visits to Glacier Bay. But to achieve that, the ships have to secure concession authorization from the National Park Service.
And those National Park Service regulations are incredibly rigid. They prioritize environmental conservation way above commercial access.
So they can't just send as many ships as they want.
No, think of Glacier Bay like a heavily zoned historic district or restricted airspace. You cannot just show up because you want to.
There is a strict limit, right?
A very strict limit of 2 cruise ships allowed into the bay daily.
2 ships total.
Total. Furthermore, there's an annual cap on cruise ship entries, limited to roughly 150 ships per summer season across the entire industry.
We should also clarify what a visit to Glacier Bay actually entails, because people might picture a bustling port with a dock and shops.
Oh, no. Ships do not dock in Glacier Bay.
You don't dock at all.
No. There's absolutely no physical infrastructure for them to tie up to, and the environment is far too sensitive for that anyway.
So what do they do?
The visit consists entirely of scenic cruising. Local park rangers actually board the ship from a smaller boat to provide commentary over the PA system.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and the ship engages in about 9 to 10 hours of continuous navigation through the fjords and past actively calving glaciers, and then it simply sails back out.
So it is a strictly managed environment where the natural limits are unchangeable by the cruise lines. You just have to fit within the box the government provides.
Exactly.
By the way, while the 2028 sales have opened, Princess has not yet released the full 8-ship roster, nor have they published the starting fares for the entire program yet. We will follow up with those figures as they become available.
Sounds good. But connecting this to our final story today, Alaska really provides a sharp contrast to the Caribbean.
It really does.
In Alaska, if a harbor or a bay is restricted, the cruise line adapts its schedule.
Right. But in the Caribbean, if a harbor is too small for a new megaship, the local port authority will literally bring in heavy machinery to alter the ocean floor to make it fit.
Which is wild to think about.
It is, and that is exactly what is happening in the U.S. Virgin Islands right now. We are looking at a major infrastructure project designed specifically to accommodate the industry's absolute largest ships.
Right, down in St. Thomas.
Yes. The West Indian Company Limited, which is commonly referred to as WICO, operates the primary Havensight dock in St. Thomas. And they have officially awarded a dredging contract to Orion Marine Construction to deepen Charlotte Amalie Harbor.
And the timeline on this?
This project is slated to begin in September 2026 with a target completion date of mid-2027.
You know, to understand why a municipal entity is spending massive amounts of capital to dredge a harbor, you really have to look at their current constraints.
Okay, set the scene for us.
Well, Havensight is not a small facility by any means. It can already berth up to 3 large cruise ships simultaneously.
Right, it's a major hub.
Yeah, to give you a sense of their traffic, WICO recorded 302 ship calls, bringing in 946,199 passengers through May 31 of fiscal 2026.
And just to clarify, they operate on a fiscal year running from October to October.
Right, so the issue isn't a lack of space at the dock itself. They have plenty of dock space.
So what is the issue?
The issue is the depth of the water approaching the dock. Joseph Boschulte, the president and CEO of WICO, stated, "We have the dock space and the berthing space to take a large ship. However, we didn't have the depth of the channel and the turning basin to allow the largest vessels to come in safely. After this dredging is done, that changes."
I want to pause on this technical terms for a second. When he says the largest vessels, he is specifically talking about the Oasis-class ships.
Yes, the absolute giants of the industry.
Let's put some numbers to that scale because it really explains the engineering hurdle here. An Oasis-class ship is roughly 1,187 feet long.
Right.
They measure between 225,000 and 237,000 gross tons. And just a quick note for clarity, gross tonnage isn't a measure of weight, it's a measure of internal volume, essentially the enclosed revenue-generating space inside the ship.
Right, it's about sheer size and capacity.
But the really critical metric for this dredging project is the draft. These ships require a draft of about 30 feet, 6 inches.
And the draft is the distance from the waterline to the absolute bottom of the ship's hull.
Exactly. So because of that 30-foot, 6-inch draft requirement, the current channel and the turning basin at Havensight are simply too shallow.
Right. And a turning basin isn't just a widened spot in a river.
No.
It has to be a specifically engineered area of a waterway with a diameter large enough to allow a nearly 1,200-foot vessel to safely pivot and reverse direction.
While maintaining a margin of safety for wind and currents.
Exactly. So right now, because Havensight lacks that depth, Oasis-class ships are forced to go elsewhere.
And these ships carry a typical double occupancy capacity of around 5,400 guests, plus a couple thousand crew members. So that's a massive economic driver.
Right. So they are forced to berth at the island's second cruise port. That is the Crown Bay Cruise Center, which is actually operated by a rival entity, the Virgin Islands Port Authority.
Ah, so there's competition on the island itself.
That is the core of the strategy here. This dredging project by WICO is a direct competitive move to reclaim that megaship market share from Crown Bay.
So Orion Marine Construction will execute this using both mechanical and hydraulic dredging techniques. Right.
Let me jump in there. Mechanical versus hydraulic dredging. What is the practical difference when we're talking about deepening a major commercial harbor?
It's essentially about how they remove the earth. Mechanical dredging essentially involves giant, heavy, machinery-like excavators or massive clamshell buckets.
Oh, so they are physically scooping up the seabed.
Exactly, physically scooping it up and placing the material onto a barge. Hydraulic dredging, on the other hand, acts more like a massive underwater vacuum.
A vacuum?
Yeah, it uses powerful pumps to suck up a mixture of water and sediment, which is called a slurry, and then it pipes it away from the site.
Okay, so they will use a combination of these two methods for the channel deepening, the maintenance dredging, and the overall port expansion.
Right. And they are banking heavily on this expansion paying off. WICO is projecting 362 cruise calls and approximately 1.2 million passengers at its Havensight dock in fiscal 2027 alone.
And you can already see the results of their forward planning in that fiscal 2027 schedule. They actually have 5 maiden calls scheduled. And a maiden call, which is a ship's very first visit to a port, that is a major milestone for a municipal dock.
Definitely. The schedule includes maiden calls for the Carnival Festival, the Carnival Firenze, the Explorer, the Third, the Norwegian Aura, and the Seven Seas Prestige.
Now, beyond the engineering and the dredging, there's a fascinating economic angle to this whole project.
Oh, absolutely. The WICO CEO, Boschulte, provided an analysis of passenger spending patterns that really highlights why St. Thomas is fighting so hard for this specific traffic.
Yeah.
He emphasized that all economic levels benefit the island, of course, but he specifically contrasted the economic footprint of Disney Cruise Line passengers with Carnival Cruise Line passengers.
And this is where municipal economics get really interesting. You might assume that a premium brand passenger like a Disney guest spends more locally.
You'd think so, right?
Right. But according to Boschulte, Disney passengers exhibit a very high rate of pre-booking. Because they are so highly invested in the brand's ecosystem, they are far more likely to have their shore excursions arranged and paid for directly through the cruise line before they even arrive in St. Thomas.
Meaning the money stays with the corporation. Whereas Carnival, on the other hand, brings a much higher volume of independent passengers.
Yes.
These are guests who disembark without a strict prepaid itinerary. And paradoxically, that budget-conscious independent cruiser is often far more valuable to the local independent business owner.
Precisely. Boschulte pointed out that the local taxi concessions, for example, deal with far more non-prepaid clients from lines like Carnival.
Right, because those smaller businesses invest in their own operations, and they are out there on the pier actively competing for that independent tourist dollar on a daily basis.
But those independent municipal economies are facing an existential threat right now.
And it isn't coming from rival islands, is it?
No, it's coming from the cruise lines themselves. Boschulte directly addressed the rapid expansion of cruise line private islands in his comments.
He specifically named Carnival's Celebration Key, Royal Caribbean's Perfect Day Collection, and MSC's Ocean Cay as major competitive issues for St. Thomas.
Because private islands offer what Boschulte termed a controlled solution. The cruise line builds a massive resort-style package where they own the food, the drinks, the cabanas, and all the excursions.
So the revenue stays almost entirely within the cruise line's corporate ecosystem.
Exactly, rather than bleeding out into the municipal economy of a traditional port.
So how does a traditional port fight back against a perfectly curated private resort?
Well, according to WICO, their strategic response is really twofold. First, they are leaning heavily into authenticity.
Which makes sense. Boschulte argues that there is still a massive market of cruisers who want genuine local food, authentic shopping, and the ability to move independently around an actual Caribbean community.
Right. But the second part of their response involves maximizing their own real estate. WICO's board recently approved their fiscal 2027 operating budget.
And in addition to passing their 2024 independent audit with 0 major findings and renewing their insurance, the directors reviewed progress on a major real estate development, didn't they?
They did. They are looking to develop more than 13 acres of upland property right there at Havensight.
And just to clarify, upland property in this context refers to the land immediately adjacent to the waterfront dock.
Right, the land right off the ship. They want to completely rethink the passenger arrival experience.
Boschulte indicated this upland development could include potential hotel and hospitality uses right there at Havensight.
Yeah, they're trying to expand their revenue stream, so they aren't just relying on collecting port fees when a ship ties up. They want to capture more of that value.
It is a massive undertaking. Between mechanically digging up the harbor floor to fit Oasis-class hulls and commercially developing 13 acres of waterfront real estate, St. Thomas is fundamentally re-engineering its physical environment just to ensure it survives the next decade of cruise deployment.
It's a huge pivot.
Look at the contrasting strategies in port management we've discussed today. Cruise lines are pouring billions into highly controlled, closed-loop ecosystems like private islands. At the same time, natural wonders like Glacier Bay remain strictly capped by federal law, forcing operators to adapt to the environment. Meanwhile, traditional municipal ports like St. Thomas are forced to fundamentally alter their ocean floors and their upland real estate just to stay competitive. It really leaves you with a lingering question about the future of the industry. As ships get larger, will tomorrow's cruisers prioritize curated, enclosed resort experiences or the sprawling, authentic local economies that require massive municipal investment simply to keep the channel deep enough?
Thanks for listening to Cruise News. Visit cruisenews.io to catch up on the latest updates and sign up for free email alerts.